Brent Brennan, I'm going to let Brent Brennan speak for himself here on maybe some unfair challenges that he thinks that, or expectations that he thinks that he's dealt with, and a roster. Kevin L. Thomas, if we could see the clip.
I think college football is rapidly changing, right? Just the world that we're in is rapidly changing. I think we're in a great spot with our athletics director in terms of where we're going with revenue share and ways that are absolutely going to give us a chance to have the caliber of talent and the kind of football teams we want to have here. I'm excited about that. And we're building a program. And that part of it is always, it's hard when you come in with the expectation because everybody's like, the program's already built, right? But there's also pieces there from a year ago that weren't part of us this year, right? And so we're still we are still actively developing those other parts to try and get them up to the level of the Big 12 conference. And that's an ongoing thing. And some of that is the decisions that we make as coaches and the situations we put our players in. And then some of that is continuing to upgrade the talent on our football team. That's why we recruit. Like everybody in America is always in a constant race to continue to elevate the talent on their football team, because by position, the more high caliber players you have at a position, the more it increases competition on the daily level at that position. And you want all of those players to feel that pressure in the practice environment so that game day is relatively easy. You want them to be on razor's edge on Monday through Thursday in the practice environment so that when they do have to line it up, they can just cut it loose, knowing that they're ultimately prepared for what's coming Saturday afternoon or Saturday night.
All right, Kilroy in the comments put it very well. He's so hard to listen to. He is. He's impossibly hard to listen to. He's saying that he had unfair expectations that were thrown upon him. His roster, well, you know what? There's a lot of players that aren't very good. Sorry, coach. You were 3-6. You just got annihilated by a team in total disarray in UCF. You lost to a team in West Virginia without half their best players. That is not an excuse. And Sheer, that was really unbecoming. I'm sorry. That I would rather just hear we've got really good coaches. We're almost there. I would have rather heard that than that. That was nonsense.
Well, he's right in the sense that practice competition is great, right?
Sure.
Absolutely. The problem is you can't say this after 9 games.
Right.
You have to say it after the first game. You're like, you know what? Like, look, there's holes on this roster. We're going to do the best we can. We lost some guys from last season. You got to kind of set the expectation, because now what happens is it sounds like an excuse, like, hey, you know what? We're not good enough. And then the thing is, like, we're working to get them up to Big 12 standards. So not only are you saying that they're not good enough, you're saying you can't even compete in the Big 12. And no offense to the Big 12, but we're not talking the SEC here, right? We're not talking Ohio State every week. You better be able to compete in the Big 12. This roster, look, is it a 10-2 roster? No.
Right.
Is it a 7-5 roster? Absolutely it is. But it's not a 3-win roster.
He's making it out like this is something that Jed Fish inherited or something. And I'll even go a step further. When I put it out there, I said what the job that he's done has been, I think, as bad as humanly possible. I mean, maybe within reason. This is amazingly bad what he's done. Kevin Sumlin won 5 games in his first year with a fraction of the talent. Kevin Sumlin with a fraction of the talent that Brent Brennan has. Now Brent Brennan talks about injuries. Now Brent Brennan says, well, the roster, kind of unfair expectations. This all just screams JV. This screams amateur. This screams just across the board. And also player development. You've got guys now that have taken significant steps backwards from where they were last year. And forget Noah for a second. We can talk about Wendell Moy. That's a great example. Wendell Moy is an interior offensive lineman that is not nearly as good as he was last year. Who is that on at that point then, Coach?
Right. Like Joseph said, even with overrating this team, 7-5 and 8-4 should be reasonable. You have the best wide receiver in college football. You have a first-round pick on the offensive line, a guy in Josh Baker who's solid, Wendell Moy who's solid. Your running back room, yes, it lost your Corey. It's good enough. Your tight end room should be good enough. It feels like an excuse. And I feel like Brent Brennan is a guy who, and I don't know if I mean this as an insult, but he doesn't think very much before he speaks, right? Because, for instance, I keep going back to after the UCF game where he's like, we're going to deep and we're going to analyze the coaching staff and we're going to take a look at what the coaches are doing. And after that, me and you were like trying to figure out what assistant he's going to fire, right?
Right.
And then on Monday, he goes, yeah, I never gave any consideration to letting go of any assistant. Well, it's like, then what did you do? You analyzed them. Now, right or wrong, to the average fan, that tells me you analyzed it and you felt there was nothing wrong.
Now, let me ask you this, Sheer, and I'm just going to say this because, oh, by the way, I am going to say something, and I said this. I am a man. When I am right on something, I am very, very modest. This is true.
Absolutely.
True.
You never remind people about it, ever.
Never want to repeat. I let it go, and I let it die in the flickering embers. Yeah, I think that actually does work.
It wasn't bad, actually.
Yeah, that actually wasn't bad. But I was out on this guy very, very, very early, and I'm going to give you an opportunity right now. Is Brent Brennan in over his head?
Man, Mike.
Yeah.
It feels that way, right? It just does. Like it feels that he is. I think a lot of times with Arizona, they hire people who don't like. I'm not sure how much research Brennan did into the job. Right. I think he just took it. Right. I think in a normal coaching search, usually a coach would be like, you know what, give me 24 hours. Let me see this program, all that. I think Brennan just took the job.
Yes.
I think he underestimated what this was. I think he thought he'd be able to come in, that, you know, everyone would love him, accept the situation, kind of no matter what it was. And he's misread the situation. But like Andy Bryant has a good point too, just to touch on what we were saying.
He always does.
Like, this isn't 3-9 or whatever they are now. What are they now? 3-6 with like 4 close losses, right? This is 3-6, and they just lost 56-12.
To a bad team.
Lose 50 to a 4th-string quarterback and another team that had injured players. Like, you don't lose 56-12 in college football. Like, you just don't.
Exactly. And again, against a 4th-string quarterback, a bad team. I thought West Virginia was rock bottom. This is even worse. This to me is worse than the 70-7 game.
Well, I know why you're saying that. I don't think anything will ever be worse than the 77 game, but you're saying that because 77 had a horrible, horrible roster. And there was light at the end of the tunnel because you knew that it was the end of something. The 56-12 doesn't guarantee it's the end of Brennan. And it's tough to deal with. It just is.
Let me ask you this. Has Brent Brennan done anything well since he's been here? You and I were talking about this on the phone, and Shearer is a little bit more diplomatic. I don't think he has. I like Dwayne.
We really thought about it though. Like, we went like step by step. I think the only thing you could point to is that he brought guys back, but he didn't win with them. So it's kind of that day where they came in the court and everyone was pumped and screaming, and it's like Arizona football's here to stay. That was a great moment, but that wasn't a result.
That was a result. Yeah. And again, like, I've been hammering this and I'm going to continue to hammer it. I don't really care. He's done no engagement in the community. David Kelly's tweet was talk about disingenuous about, oh, you know, he traveled all these places. And then he shows a video of him from May 7th where he's shaking hands with fans. That proves the point, dude. If you're showing a video of somebody shaking hands from May 7th or wherever it was, that's not engaging the fan base.
I will say this. And it is November 5th, and that could change in a week, right? I think his recruiting class is fine. I don't think it's awful. I think that there's good players. Now, Gio Richardson is visiting Vanderbilt this weekend. Terry Shelton, you never know. Luis Tunkara is visiting Florida here soon. So it could very well blow up. But as of now, I think they have the 39th recruiting class in the country. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And there are some people on the staff. I want to be very clear about this. There are some people on the staff that I want. Again, I like Dwayne Akeen. I think he's done a good job. I hope he's here. I think Alonzo Carter has done a good job. But Bobby Wade's done a good job recruiting, I guess. I don't know that there's you can look at it
on the field, though. But recruiting, I mean, it's hard to, you know, that's a great wide receiver class they have.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give them that. But the product on the field and then off the field has been abysmal. And I'm going to keep going back to this. And I don't care if somebody says, oh, Mike, I don't care. Well, I do care. The lack of engagement is just something that to me is just maddening. And again, he told Lev that, you know, that's not part of my job. I let other people do that, this and that. Can you imagine somebody saying that's their dream job? Can you imagine Dilly saying that's not my job?
Here's the issue with it. Tucson is unique. If you're at Alabama, you don't need to engage. You just need to win, right? Now, Tucson, history has shown that they have to like their head coach.
Right.
This town has to like their head coach as a person.
Right.
If that doesn't happen, you've got no chance here. You just
Right.
don't.
And he gave himself absolutely no chance.
He's not a bad dude. I don't want to conflate that with him being bad. He just didn't work hard enough or didn't get the right advice to get out there and made sure. Like right now, if he when Jed Fish was hired, he said, "Guys, we're gonna suck." Like he really, that's what he said. He's like, "We're gonna be bad, but I promise you, I have a plan to this." Brent Brennan should have said, "Look, we might have some struggles. I have a plan. Here is my plan. And I'm going to go out in the community and make sure you like me. So when it takes time to execute my plan, at least you can go back and say, yeah, but that guy's pretty cool."
Do you think that he just basically thought, well, you know what, I can just, here's what I think happened. And here's why, to me, it's kind of it's fascinating to me. I think he thought, well, you know what, I'm just going to win games. I don't need to do anything off the field or whatever. And now that he's not winning games, he's saying, well, the roster isn't that good. The expectations were a little bit too high. I think he banked that he was going to win games and people would be just fine with it.
See, I disagree. I think he was mentioning Dick Tomey 100 times a presser for a reason. And then he brings all these old players. And I think that it wasn't about winning games. It was, look how connected I am and how much I love this university. I don't have to go out and do that because you already know how much I love this school. My brother played here. Dick Tomey taught me everything and all that. And he just assumed that the community would eat it up. And that's just not how this town works.
But that also shows a lack of understanding too. Anybody that lived Dick Tomey, or Dick Tomey, as you would say, people make Dick Tomey out. Some of the people that didn't live it, like he was Lute Olson or something. He had 3, I think, top 25 seasons. Everything was generally boring. It was 6-6, and every 5th season, Arizona would be really good. That doesn't. So the whole thing about, Dick Tomey this, Dick Tomey that. Sure, he did a nice job here, but Dick Tomey also was not this guy where it's like, I'm hugging with Lute Olson right here. So that showed me a lack of understanding as well. But the fact, though, too, is that he said he was going to do a deep eval on the coaching staff and then decided to do nothing. I don't really know what to say.
He screwed up that quote so bad. He really did. And just from public perception, I don't even need a coach to be fired. I get it, whatever. But you can't go out and say, I'm going to evaluate and take a deep dive into the coaching staff, and 48 hours later say, no, I never gave consideration of firing anyone. It's a bad look. And I don't want anyone to be fired.
I agree with you.
I'm not rooting for an assistant to be fired, and I don't think it would really do anything at this stage. The offense is broken. It would be a pure sending a message type of deal. I don't even know who you would fire. It just, to me, it's what assistants do when they buy time, or head coaches. So a part of me says, is he not firing an assistant because he knows that this thing's over in a month? And again, I don't know, but that's my first gut reaction. Is like Gus Malzahn knows, right? He knew. He said to himself, man, if I don't make a move, I'm fired. The heat was turned up. So on Monday, he takes the podium and he goes, yeah, we fired our defensive coordinator. I'm getting rid of offensive play calling. And then they go and they whoop the crap out of Arizona, because he knew that if he didn't make a move, he's probably fired. And the question is, did DRF, because she's very active, did she go to Brent Brennan and say, I suggest you make a move? And he didn't. There's stuff that is kind of missing there. But I'm really surprised. And I'm more surprised because he said it was recruiting related and such. There is an implication he's not firing anyone.
We all silly like the mayor.